And I'm live. So, according to the software and the internet, you are here with me on this fine Wednesday evening as all of civilization threatens to veer off the rails in Civil War. We're going to talk about something truly important, which is the 2020 USPSA Factory Gun Nationals. If you haven't seen already on my channel, I've got my vlog up. The match video drops soon, but I had the pleasure of sharing this trip with a couple of gentlemen, so I'll introduce them to you now. First, just going left to right here is the soulless left-handed ginger, known as Red Scott.
I keep telling you, for every freckle I've got is a soul I've stolen. I have plenty of souls.
They're not yours, though.
Who's counting?
They're not yours. Hey, I like the Holler Sun shirt, man. Work the trigger shout out. Yeah. There we go. And the next man is the man that you know makes you feel bad about beating you with a gun that he shouldn't be able to, but does. It's
Tony.
Look at this. Look at this dramatic introduction. He's got his rubber duck. He slides on. Yeah, boy. Look at that. There's Tony. GM26 himself. Tony, how are you this evening?
Not too shabby.
You'll notice the sound of Tony's voice. He has a voice for radio coupled with top quality musician microphones and his streamer setup. What's your Twitch stream, Tony?
Humble Marksman, or Humble Marksman.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Ain't got one of those. And
not that
rounding
popular.
out our contingent of left-handed shooters, this time of the Utahan variety, it's Robert from the Paracast.
Hey everybody, how you doing?
All right.
Yeah, I think rounding out this thing, I'm the only production shooter in this group right now.
This is actually an intervention, Robert. I got you on here as a chance to talk to you about your life decisions.
I got my open gun.
Got your open gun ready to rock and roll.
Actually, I'm actually running. I've got 3 different carry optics setups that I'm looking at right now to play with in the winter, just in the winter time. And right now, it's actually leaning on which Tony. It's just for Tony, but it's a G19.
Oh wait, we're not supposed to do that on streams. I think we're in trouble. You can't show guns on streams on YouTube.
That was an
airsoft replica, I know,
yeah.
But I'm just warning you. So don't display actual firearms.
Susan
airsoft is okay, but we're going to try and not talk about airsoft tonight. We want to talk about real guns.
Oh, fine. This is why the Paracast is nice. I can wave guns all around, and you hear it all the time in the background. Nobody actually cares at that point. But I'm doing my own edits, so.
Yeah, it's just you have to edit out all the cussing, and there's a fair piece of that usually, especially when I come on the show.
This is true.
There we go. So all of us had the distinct pleasure of making it down to the bustling metropolis that is Frostproof, Florida, to participate in the 2020 Factory Gun Nats. So just going around the horn, I'll start with you, Robert, and we'll work our way around. What were your thoughts on the match overall? Just as an experience, being the highest level of the game, what were your thoughts?
I thought the match was generally well put together. There was long courses, short courses. It was pretty fun. From a production standpoint, I shot both matches, but I thought the production carry optics match was actually harder than the limited match. The limited match, it didn't seem like there was a lot of creativity that was put into it, and I understand why. They didn't really have a down day to switch up the stages, but the stages by and large were a lot of fun, and I think in a lot of situations they actually had enough options. A couple stages had a ton of options, but there was enough options that people actually were able to think about it and come up with their own little plan, depending if they're right-handed, left-handed, or whatever.
Tony, that was your third major match. Your third major. So what did you think about nationals compared to Tony? While being the highest ranked shooter on this panel, has shot the fewest number of majors by a very wide margin. So, all of that said, going in fresh with nationals compared to all the other ones, what's your thoughts?
Honestly, it just felt like 3 matches in a row, and with a lot of international people. So that's how I saw it.
International, really?
Yeah, because my whole squad was everyone was not from the States.
Oh, really?
I think maybe one person was from the States, but everyone else was from South America, which was pretty cool.
Meanwhile, we just had the white guy shooting carry optics master squad. It's basically what me and Reds were on.
That's a fair assessment.
That's some
Just like
California guys.
8 or 9 masters in carry optics on the same squad. It was a good squad. I enjoyed it a lot, honestly. But Red, what were your thoughts on the match?
I was very happy with it. I nerded the hell out, though. Like, you witnessed a bunch of that. I was busy playing tours, taking pictures everywhere. Just for me, it was an experience beyond just the shooting. But as far as the actual stages themselves, I would say I'm a little surprised. There were definitely challenging stages. Some of them were surprising. Like, you looked at them and at first they seemed really simple, and then there's some piece of that was almost a gotcha. It almost wanted to goad you into going too fast or overshooting a position, stuff like that. But I almost expected more complexity than what I saw there as far as like how the stages were set up. I don't know if that's really a disappointment or not. I can't say that I had a bad time. I did very much enjoy the match, and I agree with Robert. There was a really nice variety of short courses and long courses, and there was like activator sequence stuff, and there was just some stages with some wide open targets, and there was a good mixture of partials and steel. It wasn't too much of any one thing at any one time.
Yeah, I agree. I think so from a match production standpoint, number one, Frostproof sucks. It's in the middle of nowhere. And you're forced to pick between creature comfort and convenience to the range. So like Robert, I know you stayed at a place that was probably higher on creature comfort, but you're spending at least an hour in the car every day commuting to and from.
I think it took about 35 minutes to get there from Winter Haven. But it definitely was a whole lot closer to civilization and people with all the teeth in their mouth. So that was a positive.
So, I mean, if you wanted to go to dinner, how far did you have to drive to not McDonald's and Frostproof?
Well, we actually had Jody Ann back at the house, and she made dinner for us most of the nights. So I would just walk into the kitchen. It was pretty nice.
Damn.
Well, that's probably the good way to do it. So for those of you who are interested in participating in matches, because as you all know, the first rule of founding a gun range is it can't be within 40 minutes of a true metropolitan area. So there's never any hotels within 20 minutes or whatever. So
I mean,
that's
to be
certainly the
fair,
case on Frostproof. They carry it to an extreme.
I think that's a good thing, though, especially if you're shooting gnats and you're commuting to gnats like I did. I actually don't like the distraction, or I don't want any distraction. So I can just go there, shoot, and then hang out with friends, sleep, and then shoot, and then just rinse and repeat until it's over. And that's my perspective.
I could have handled some better restaurants. Like the first night when we went out to that beer garden in Sebring, like that was pretty top shelf. I could have handled that every night.
Okay.
But we just got tired on some of those other nights. It's like, well, I guess we're eating the McDonald's and Frostproof.
Hey, man, McDonald's is delicious.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I like the fact that it was convenient. Like the fact that I've done these matches where I've had to stay somewhere where I'm an hour outside the range. Those are some rough, especially when you get the morning. Like, man, you have to get up early. You have to be super paranoid about it and making sure you have enough time. And like, even though I hated the morning because I'm not a morning person, it was still one of those things like I could get up and not be super stressed about, gee, can we make it to the range on time? Because it was 15 minutes from the house. Yeah. So I'm happier to have had that convenience for getting to the range and back than I am for, okay, it was 30 minutes in either direction to find a restaurant of some modicum of quality.
Yeah. I mean, I get it too. I mean, obviously I prized it. That's why I picked that Airbnb, but you're going to be staying at an Airbnb if you don't want to. We had a lot of bugs in ours, though. That was kind of like good grief.
It's Florida, man.
It is. So the stages is where I wanted to talk next. I personally liked the stages. I totally wrote off the match looking at the match book because I was like, these are a bunch of scrub stages. Like it's going to be terrible. And then you actually got and saw them on the ground and saw how they did the angles and saw how they did more importantly, the distance. Like nothing was to scale with what they showed in there. And the thing that I thought was really cool to carry optics shooters, and I feel bad for production guys, honestly, is all of the activator sequences. There was maybe one like every other stage had a serious activator sequence. And there was maybe one activator sequence in the whole match that was just like a very basic, like shoot the popper, shoot the open target, come back to the swinger, and then go on about life. There was maybe one engagement that was like that. Like generally it was shoot the activator, You can chance throwing 2 at the 20-yard hardcover partial at 20 yards and then come back to the swinger, maybe. And you really had to know your capabilities and what you could get away with on those activator sequences. I thought that was really cool and really well done, because he took, like he said, if you want to blend positions and carry optics, you're going to have to earn it. And I think that really did a good job of stratifying sort of the men from the boys in that regard. And I fell in the boy category, sadly, whereas Tony is very manly with the Squad 26.
We all fell into the boy category.
Look, man, there's only a few of us on this podcast or video cast or whatever that lost to a girl. I'm just saying.
I lost to a girl. It's true. It happened. She was, I think, 3 positions in front of me. Less than 1%, but
Who was this?
Justine.
Oh.
She was like 60. What was I? I was 60th in the match. She was like 57. So I was like 77.02, and she was like 77.79 or whatever. I can't read that, dude.
Oh, I'm just showing you. I've got everybody's stuff pulled up.
Yeah. Look at the bottom. Nope. Scroll farther down. And there's Robert.
Well, your shooting productions is a little bit different.
Shooting production was different. What did you think about the match as a production shooter, Robert?
I actually, you talked about the swinger sequences. I did not change anything. Hardly anything from production to limited. I mean, I obviously didn't reload the gun as much when I shot the limited match, but as far as the sequencing and things like that, as far with the swingers, I didn't feel that they were really negatively advantaging a production shooter, but I really liked it because they didn't set it up in such a way that production, it was kind of one of those standard local matches where they build everything to be a giant screw you to production. It actually felt like the match was built with the idea of presenting enough options in a spot so that a production shooter actually could successfully shoot the stage without doing standing reloads every single stage kind of thing. And that was nice. It's refreshing because most of the matches that you see as a low cap anymore, they've turned into basically limited matches.
Yeah, that's not, I mean, you're not wrong. I thought that was interesting just due to the match format, how it wasn't just 32, 32, 32, 32. The fact that there were like highly technical, highly positional short courses. I mean, they tested, other than support hand only, they tested every single skill I can think of to test.
Yeah.
I mean, there were a lot of hit the spot stages where you had to have the best presentation and see like 3 or 4 targets. You had to hit like, okay, I'm about 3 feet back from this crack in the fault line. And,
there were no prone positions, right? Like no proning, and then very few really deep squats.
Wasn't there a low port? Yeah, there was a low port.
There was kind of a low port on the building stage.
House.
Yeah, the shoot house building had a low port.
But that one wasn't terrible.
It wasn't terrible. But
I'm actually really glad they didn't do a prone stage because I mean we had a couple of days where the rain picked up.
Yeah. I'm glad it didn't happen.
From a match production standpoint, I think they made the right call by not putting a prone stage in. And honestly, like I think it's kind of a gimmick, like to put a prone stage in because that's not a core marksmanship skill. And to potentially stratify the field other than like maybe like 6 shots on a stage with prone, I feel like you can't tie too many points up on such an obscure skill.
Fair enough.
But I thought the match was very well paced. It was very well. I mean, they flowed very well due to how they did the stages as well.
Well, I actually really appreciate this year how they took a look at it and they said, oh, Mason Lane's arm isn't broken, so we'll actually introduce strong hand only. So I thought that was actually a change from last year. I was really appreciative there.
Yeah. So, Red, you've been quiet on this. What are your thoughts on the stages?
Well, I kind of give a general review. I think I don't know. There was a few things that, man, there's things that I hate doing that I didn't have to do at this match. So part of me is like, I'm glad it wasn't.
What?
I am a huge hater of really low ports, like the super low squat ports. And in Southern Texas, a lot of the majors, they have those like crazy low ports. And I don't mean like that you could choose to go prone, like it's low enough that you going prone is in a favor, but you can't just lean down into the port.
Right.
So that like deep, your butt's touching the ground kind of squat to get through the port. So there wasn't any of that. So I was kind of happy about that. There wasn't any weak hand shooting, so I was happy about that. What little bit of strong hand required shooting there was actually fairly simple. So again, I was happy about that. So I don't know. I mean, part of it is like it didn't test the argument about prone plus or minus. Yeah, I mean, I think Shannon's smart enough to know that there's a high risk of rain, and he doesn't want people having to lay down in the mud.
Yeah, and that's smart.
But I think the other end of that, though, is that there was definitely some stuff in there that was probably skipped for the sake of I don't know what. Like I said, probably I'm a little surprised at one of those because we had a bunch of those like standard kind of stages. I'm surprised that none of those had a weak hand aspect to them.
Right. It's kind of an interesting thing. I mean, it seems like there's two schools of thought on major matches. It's either you put together a fun match that presents a lot of options, or you test all the skills. And I can't say that either one's is better or worse. I mean, there's certainly an argument to be made for a nationals level match testing all the skills that you would have. But at the same time, sometimes when that happens, it turns more into just, how technical can you be, as opposed to putting a lot of targets out there at various different areas and things and saying, this is how we actually shoot in a practical shooting competition. And this is what we're actually going to do for all of the 20 some odd stages. Generally, I kind of prefer that. Build a stage in a match that is fun and can challenge the top end shooters, but still leave the lower class shooters walking away saying, that was just fun.
Yeah, well, I fall into that second category, but I will say that was one of the things that I did like. There wasn't, aside from literally the standard stage that said you shoot like this in this order. Mm-hmm. I think every single stage, even we had that one super short activator stage, where it was like the two IPSICs, the one max trap, and the two pieces of steel.
Yeah,
on our squad, there was like 6 different ways people shot that. I'm like, that's insanity to me that there's so many options. But it was like that on every stage. Like no matter what you picked for your stage plan, the reality was there was 4 or 5 different variations. And to me, that's a sign of a good match. When you don't stick somebody with well, this is just the way it's going to, I've been to those matches like, yeah, there's 2 options here, but trust me, there is a wrong choice to make. Right. You can shoot it that other way, but you're not doing yourself any favors. But this one, it was like, man, there were some stages I saw where it was like there was one where for sure there was a way to shoot it in 4 positions or 5. And you could blend the positions or you could, shorten up positions. And the reality was it was your ability to shoot in transition, which made the difference. So some people shot it in 5, some people shot it in 4, but you were seeing the same stage times and sort of similar hits. And to me, that's excellent. That's what you want to see in a match. You want to be able to see that there's the varying skills and how you choose to attack the stage will have an effect on its outcome.
Right. I worked the limited match as well, and I actually did the stage 18 that had the 2 partials and the 2 partials, the steel, and then the clamshell. And it was really funny because when the super squad came through and shot it, we talk about shooting in options. Even they had different ways that they shot it, and it was funny because Todd Jarrett kept coming up and he kept looking at the timer. And finally, I'm asking him, like, what are you looking for? He's like, I want to know what the first shot is based on how they actually pick up that gun and what they're aiming at for their very first thing. And so he was just analyzing that right up to the point where he actually got up and shot, and then he shot it his way. And you would think that stage of all stages, because it wasn't like there was a whole lot of like things to do, but by gosh, everybody shot that thing so different. It was really amazing.
Well, and for me, weirdly, that was one of my better stages. That one, I had a great grab and load. By the way, I think Jay Beal is in the chat. Thank you to him because he's the one that got me to start doing a bunch of unloaded starts in practice. So thanks. But that one went really well. But a lot of guys in our squad have different, like, we'll hit this popper, then hit this paper, then go to the max trap and hit the other popper and then the paper. And I was like, I looked at it, I'm like, I'm going to load and shoot straight across. Like,
I think that's literally
paper,
what I
popper, paper, max trap, and then I'm just like, okay.
What's interesting is the time didn't seem to matter because, like, I looked at some of the guys who did the what I call the more aggressive plan, which was partial activator, steel, partial, and finish on the max trap.
That's what I shot.
Yeah, that's the higher risk plan. But the guys who ran the activator partial max trap, then either paper or steel, that plan, like if it was run well, it was the same time.
Yeah.
And it was just crazy to me that it seemed obvious to me that the high risk plan would have been faster, but it wasn't. It was purely based on your ability to transition and drive the gun and the confidence you had in laying it down. Like that was the biggest thing I walked away from in that match, because like I know what I can do in practice and I know what I did at that match, and like I left a lot of my ability on the table, and I'm sure everybody says that at every major. But as I was putting together my match video, I was studying it, and I was really understanding like a lot of what I need to be practicing is just going out there with the big PP energy to just lay all the cards on the table with it in a controlled manner. And every once in a while, one's going to slip off the edge of the table, and it's not that bad if you're keep getting on the pace. But I mean, I was seconds off the pace on every stage because I was staying well inside my lane. So a lot of my training next season is going to be devoted to finding that closer to the edge line of control versus speed. So that brings us to the segue. So that was my first major. So learning how I needed to be training for a national style match and what the issue was on how I was approaching my training. The other thing I learned was that managing stress at the match, I didn't even realize it, that I was like super rigid and stiff for like the first 3 stages I shot. And then once I was aware of it, I was able to manage it. But that's something I need to work on, psyching myself out more. So how would you, with this nationals experience in the bank now, how would you approach your training for next season, assuming you're going to go to Dega and shoot some nationals next year? We'll go reverse this way. So kick it over to Red. Oh no, Red.
You missed. It's this way.
Well, you're pointing to the wallpaper.
High five.
Or your paint.
Yeah, got him.
I will say, yes. I will say, as far as initially just the thing with your tension, it was funny because I was being a total nerd and like letting the excitement happen. And the first couple stages, it was kind of funny. I think I was annoying you with it a little bit. And then like when you came up to me, you're like, dude, I realized I've been tense this whole time. Like, I can't believe it. Like, I feel my shoulders. Like, I got to relax. I'm like, all right, man. Like the next couple of stages, like my nerdiness and excitement over the fact that I was at nationals, like you suddenly were like, oh yeah, that's just Brian being a dork. Like it was like you relaxed over it. I thought it was pretty funny. But other than that, as far as prep for Nats, I am definitely going to try to shoot Nats for 21. Definitely trying to go to the CMP park. Tony and I have talked a little bit about this, but just before I went to Nats, like I saw the door to speed open up. I didn't have the control to match the speed, but the door was there. And so I'm going to be heading back to that because the reality is when I look at, say, like between like Tony's match performance, I think, Tony, you were 23rd.
Yeah.
And I was 43rd. So I was 20 places behind him. But the reality was the difference was 18 seconds worth of match time. There were 22 stages. So that's less than a second per. Our hits were comparable. I'd actually argue my hits were a little bit better than his. But that speed made a huge difference. And so what I'd like to do is get to the point where I can tap that speed, because that's going to be the thing that's going to push me forward. And I do have a goal. My goal is to make top 25 at nationals this next year. So that's where I'm going.
And that brings us down to Mr. Wong.
I'm going to shoot 2021 left-handed. So I have no idea where I'm going to be.
I thought you were just doing this in the off season. Are you really going to do this?
No, I'm testing something, so I'm going to shoot completely left-handed with my left eye. I'm not left eye dominant, so I'm just doing it as an experiment. So we'll see how it turns out.
Wait. You're going to shoot as a left-handed or a
Yeah.
left eye dominant?
Both. Completely the left side. I'm switching. I have no muscle memory on my left side, so.
Yeah, you're going to have to change your grip then.
Yeah, I'm also keeping the mag release also on the left side, so I'm gonna have to like learn how to use the trigger finger to release the mag. But
On a smaller gun, I've found that you may want to look at the middle finger. It's you see.
yeah, I mean, I tried that. I'll
Yeah.
experiment. I mean, it's still up in the air.
Oh yeah, you do more
Yeah.
experimenting than anybody I know.
So
Yep.
left-handed.
Yep.
So that means I get to give you the same amount of crap that I give these other two guys now.
Yeah, I know. I got to see what the left-handed people were complaining about. I mean, it's
I'm pretty convinced it's just to get attention. They just want to
Oh, it
remind
totally is.
everybody that they're different and special.
yeah. So now
I
we
hate
have.
to break you, but you brought it up more than I did. at
That's not
National.
true.
Yes, it is.
The first day I established the joke, and then it got in your head, so that it kept coming up on every other day, and I would only bring it up after you did, and you
Actually,
brought it up.
I did notice at this match. I mean, a lot of matches that I shoot in terms of majors and stuff like that, it feels like as a left-handed shooter, you tend to look at the stages like you're basically running them in reverse, like you would at any normal one. This one actually felt like it was pretty balanced in terms of it didn't really seem to advantage or disadvantage a left-handed shooter for the most part. I mean, there was a couple stages that were more left-hand friendly. There's a couple stages that were right-hand friendly. And so it was actually kind of nice. I enjoyed not having to always swim against the stream because it's not like I can't run a stage as a right-hander. It's mostly that if you ever find a good left-handed stage, sometimes it feels like you're just swimming upstream, like butting into everybody that's doing their normal conga line.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest annoyance, honestly. Like other than that, I didn't see anything during the match that I would say was like, oh my god, this is just like terrible. I will say there were a few stages that I shot the same direction as right-handers, only because target order made better sense.
Yeah.
There weren't a whole lot of actually truly symmetrical stages. Most of the stages were asymmetrical in their design, which actually I'm kind of a fan of. So there were a couple of stages I tackled in a weird way versus everybody else, just because it made more sense for me for one reason or another. But other
Do you
than
know that the classifiers was a disadvantage to left-handed shooters?
no, not
Do
even.
you think it would be a disadvantage if you were a production shooter because you have to do the reload?
It's par for the course.
Okay. Because I was curious because it's asymmetric, so you have to be facing a certain shoulder angle. So that I mean, I don't know if it'll make much of a difference at the high level, but maybe if you prefer really going one way versus the other, then you might have an issue if you're forced to reload. But for carry optics, I don't think it would matter.
I think generally speaking, when you shoot as a lefty long enough, you start to develop develop ways to actually navigate the stage and get the gun reloaded, and you just do it.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I am kind of bummed those classifiers hit because that knocked me out for GM.
Yeah, that I'm really sad for Tyler. I mean, did you see how much he fell, dude? Holy.
Wait, what's
he went
Tyler?
to 91%.
Wait, I have a higher percentage than Tyler? That's crap.
Yeah, because I think all three of his classifiers from Nats counted, or at least two of them did. So they bumped him down like crazy. And he made GM, but since River City was slow to update their scores, he didn't get the GM. And I got the response back from USPSA. They said like they can't retroactively do it because they'll be manipulating the scores. I'm like, that's BS. That's because the guy got it. It's just
the scores were manipulated on the way in, not on the way out.
Yeah, it was like that sucks.
That really sucks for Tyler. I mean, in my mind, a lot of guys are knocking on the door of GM at that match. So, like at the match, there were 22 GMs and 63 or 4 masters, and at least I think 2 or 3 have already cracked G after the match.
Yeah, I suspect a few of them bounced pretty fast. There were a lot of those guys that were at the top that it was like I joke and use the sandbag thing a lot, but there were definitely some guys that were like legit hardcore sandbaggers. I mean, you're M class, but you're on the super squad. Come on.
Yeah, I think some of them were G and open, and then they probably just switched to CO. So I mean, they're Gs.
So that's what's interesting about this is a trope I encounter online, and I always feel like I have to okay, let's be objective about this. So it's so easy to make GM and carry optics. It's like, if that's true, then why are all the Gs who are competing in carry optics still masters?
Because they don't care about classifiers. I don't know. Part of it is like, for me, it's a little bit tough. Making GM is not a small feat. I'm definitely a lot further along than I thought I would be at the end of this year, which is cool. But I don't know. I guess it really just depends. Some of these guys they just don't shoot classifiers. They only shoot majors, or they purposely tank on classifiers because they don't care or whatever. And then they end up with a skill level that's far beyond 95%. They're at 103% realistically. So when I go shoot a match and she's like, "Man, you shoot really well," it's like, yeah, but that's not G level shooting. Well, even in 95%, you're not quite GM level shooting anymore. You're like sort of really high M level shooting. You know what I mean? It's the way it's skewed everything. So I don't really know how much we can equate that to real life anymore.
I think that, they're making effort by using national stages with national hit factors. And by the way, I scored 100 on that one classifier. I think it's the 2002 or whatever.
Nice.
I had two of those classifiers
Well
stick, and one of them was an 80 and one was 100. So averages for a 90 and like 286s rolled off or something like that. So it boosted my percentage a couple points. But
see, I had one be an 81, I had an 84, and then I had an 86.
Oh, that sucks.
And so the 81 became my F score, and the 84 counts, and the 86 counts. And I dropped off a 95 and an 88 because of it.
Yikes.
Matt brings up a good point. Yes, some of the classifiers are busted, specifically the 18 series where they didn't have enough GMs and carry optics. So they used all production hit factors, and those targets are all like hardcover partial heavy. And the iron sight time is significantly lower on those types of stages than the dot time is. So yes, the 18 series classifiers are significantly easier to score well on. But if you look at all the old classifiers, if you look at like El Prez and like any of those style of
Basically
classifiers,
the 99 series classifiers.
Any of them, any of the like classic ones that people run at club matches all the time, like look at TikTok, look at pucker factor down the middle, all of those ones, they have the exact same hit factor as production. And if it's ones without reloads, then like, El Prez is a dot an advantage? No. You can't do it any faster because that's purely like your draw, your split, and your gun handling and transitions. It's the same. So, if you look at the division who had most of their classification hit factors adjusted up at the 18 update, can you guess what it is? Production. Production had more of their at least the 20 that I looked at, all 20 of them, the production hit factor was adjusted up towards carry optics, which was unreasonably high in 2018. So now production and carry optics are on the same level, except for the new classifiers, where that data is mined from matches. But even then, that brings up Robert, I was talking to you about this earlier today. Then it becomes like, well, how weak is the field versus, the guy who's winning the match or whatever.
Right.
And so talking about just keeping it in the world of production and CO and not kind of fanning out. Well, you could, I guess, honestly. So in CO, we've got Max, who's a beast and basically dunks on the whole field by 5.5 points. No other division has a winner like that in it, a spoiler who's so next level good. And Casey Eusebio got.
There's a caveat there though, because you did give him your super bump.
Fist bump. It's basically performance enhancing drugs, and I'm sorry, Max, you're welcome.
So it's his fault. Blame him.
Yeah.
Why it happened with Max? Blame him.
Yeah, the fist bump goes a long way. Although I will say it, he gave me the softest, gingerest little fist bump you can imagine. Like somebody who's really worried about hurting his hands. It's like, I get it, I understand why you're doing it, but at the same time, like, come on, man.
You got to keep his hands pretty for holding that trophy for that picture.
Yeah, that's right. And I don't think many people picked up on that, which is fine. But
oh man, you're gonna bring it up later though.
Well, they can watch the vlog to the end and know what I'm talking about. But
I don't know. I think people get too wrapped around the axle on classifiers. I know it's the metric that we all use, but if we all agree that to a large extent the classification system it has problems and in some cases been shot out, the 18 series obviously is an issue. At a certain point, you just stop caring, and you're like, I'm just going to go show up at the match, and a nationals level match is who I am really. And that's kind of where you end it.
To be fair, like in the general case, the classification system works very well. If you look at any match structure, usually you will have the G's and M's on top, followed by the A's, B's, and then so forth, right?
True.
So on a like for most cases it works, but then it's the exceptions that we always talk about, like the sandbaggers or the people who are grandbagging, that kind of stuff. But generally speaking, the classifiers do their job fine.
I think that's what's awesome about nationals since they started doing it since Luke and Luigi basically broke it that one time.
Yeah.
Is by forcing there to be classifiers to come out of it. Because I did that at the North Texas Open. I intentionally put a classifier in the match to make everybody shoot a good classifier if they wanted to score well at the match. And I think that's a great idea. I wish all majors had a statutory classifier or two. And I mean, if you think about like the stupid standard exercise type stages, why reinvent the wheel on those? Why not just throw in one of the stupid classifiers and just let that be the skills test?
I mean,
Yeah,
if you
that's
shoot
actually a really
any
good point.
level 2 or above, it will count as part of your classification if you do
Only
well
if there are 3 Gs placing above 90%.
enough. Sure.
And there has to be at least, what is it, 30 or 50 shooters in that division?
I don't know the number, but I know a guy who went from A class straight to G due to the Arizona sectional. That was pretty cool.
Oh, did he beat a G class though?
He beat Travis.
Yeah.
McCamish.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is pretty stout to beat Travis.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know, man. I think the classification, it's better than the IDPA way that they do it because there are legit sandbaggers in IDPA. Like those guys take getting, obviously you are, you jerk. They take getting those trophies in the because you're not allowed to have cash prizes in IDPA based on performance like you can in USPSA. But they take like the trophy hunting way more seriously than the people in USPSA seem to.
Well, that's
which is
because
strange.
It's a little known fact that in IDPA, if you take your expert level SSP trophy into the Golden Corral for the early bird dinner, they give you 10% off. So, I mean, you can get 10% off.
$1 saving.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh my goodness. It pays for like half a
Chocolate fondue fountain. Yeah.
Ooh.
Salmonella fountain. Anyway,
That's actually an interesting point. Like IDPA just put out a thing saying like they had 25,000 members.
They've always had 25,000. Like every
Yeah,
year they say they have
but that's
25,000
internationally. So has
Oh.
IDPA fallen off that much?
there's been a lot of guys even here, like the area I'm in, legitimately like early 2010s was strong into the IDPA. There were guys who were shooting USPSA too, but it was like this whole group that was here. All the good shooters, like legitimately good shooters, were shooting IDPA. And just over the years, they just sort of petered off, and all of them are either shooting 3-gun or USPSA. And all the good shooters now, like as far as pistols concerned, all of them are shooting USPSA, and most of them don't even bother looking at IDPA. And the thing is, we sort of had this weird local resurgence of IDPA guys, and now they're all starting to shoot USPSA, and they're shooting IDPA less. And so it seems to be kind of the way it goes.
Yeah, I remember somebody once telling me, it was one of the area directors for IDPA, that basically in IDPA, the lifespan of a shooter is about 18 months. And when you think about that, that doesn't seem like a lot, but they go about 18 months and then they'll either quit or go on to USPSA or something else. So who knows?
Honestly, I quit, but the way they rejiggered their classification system last year allowed me to sandbag like a champ in COs, so I did. So,
and you got your one equity bump for winning a major match.
Yeah, well, so I was a sharpshooter in carry optics. And
What a jerk! What a jerk!
I won a major match. Like I beat the PCC shooter that won next highest, who's actually a friend of mine. So I had the highest overall, like best time or whatever for USPSA, won high overall, won all these crazy trophies. And so they bumped me from sharpshooter to expert.
And then you proceeded to sandbag expert and just keep going up the list.
My plan, and this is gonna depend on how things go next year. It's in flux right now, but I was hoping to shoot the 21 IDPA national match, and then I'm gonna shoot any other division. It doesn't matter at majors to collect my points, and I don't care how I perform because it doesn't matter. I'm just collecting the match points, and then I will go to nationals in CO, and from expert, I'm hoping to go step on like the heels of guys like BJ Norris.
That'll work.
Get you some of that Wilson Combat money.
I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this once. Fuck Bill Wilson.
Yeah, you're not going to get me to disagree there.
Well, I don't know. So this is a tangent. So Mike Foley on the, I guess it was the Firearms Nation podcast, hinted to buying another shooting sport. Initially, everyone thinks it's IDPA. I think it's Pro-Am. I think they're going to buy Pro-Am.
I hope they do, because I wanted to shoot a Pro-Am match for so long. I love falling steel stuff. That would be a blast. I would shoot that crap all the time.
Yeah, I Pro-Am looks awesome. Like, I don't know of any clubs here in the DFW that could put on a Pro-Am match because nobody has that much steel. Like 30 to 40 pieces of steel per stage, like strong.
Come on down to Cove, dude. Come shoot one of our falling steel matches.
What is Pro-Am?
So Pro-Am is basically, the way they set it up is it's a whole bunch of falling steel. And they set up a par time for the stage. So you only have X amount of time to shoot. And the idea is to shoot as much of the steel down as you can.
Everybody's like a 10-second or a 10-round magazine.
Yeah.
Wait, so why is it called Pro-Am? Is it like pros and amateurs?
Correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the same thing.
It's like major.
Yeah. So it's like golf Pro-Am. So the pros and the AMs can compete together, but
Yeah.
like the prizes for the pros versus the prizes for the amateurs are not the same.
I got you. Okay.
But I can't remember who I was talking. I was talking to Yi Min about it and talking about if you were to make USPSA more marketable to like a mass consumer audience, if we did have Pro-Am and Nationals was like a 2-day traditional USPSA style match only to fill out a bracket for the Pro-Am style match that was like man on man and determined who the winner was. Like, a Pro-Am style match of like the 64 best shooters the sport has to offer would be incredible. That would be so cool. But it's a huge divergence to what we like about USPSA.
Well, that, and it's really hard to set up, and so it takes a lot of effort to actually get the thing put on the ground. We just did one this last Saturday, and Kenny Terry, who set it up, he said that's the biggest reason we don't do it more often is just the amount of time and effort that it takes to actually put the match together. Because not only do you have to set the entire match up, but you actually have to shoot it as a pro and then shoot it as an amateur just to establish the par times for it, which is fun. I mean, it's great, but he says just the amount of just trying to get people there to help get it on the ground and everything like that can sometimes be a bit of a challenge. But it's a blast. It's so much fun to do.
So anyway, that's my hope, is that the Pro-Am makes its way into the USPSA umbrella of gun games.
Is Pro-Am, is it actually an organized game right now? Or is it just a loose affiliation?
I'd heard that somebody owns property rights to it. Like Dave Savigny, I think, owned the Pro-Am brand.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are Pro-Am style matches, but like the official Pro-Am kind of died, and it's like swapped hands and different people have been in charge of it. And like SIG tried to sponsor or revive it back when it was 2018 or something like that. So it's sort of had a weird storied history.
I wonder if it ends up being like one of those things like where USPSA tried to do their own 3-gun match and, of course, failed miserably doing it, so that nobody ever really wants to do it. Just because why would you ever affiliate with USPSA just to shoot a Pro-Am match that you didn't actually have to affiliate with them before, and subsequently you don't actually have to send them $3.
But the Pro-Am that they have, I think the official one has been in like Georgia or Alabama, and it's been like every other year for the past few years. And I looked at doing it, but the match fee was like $300. It's just like serious match fee. And
yeah, for $300, they better have a bunch of kids resetting that still for you, because that's kind of spendy for a fall.
Yeah, it was expensive match. I mean, like USPSA national style match.
Yeah.
That's more than nationals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, changing gears to a more lighthearted side and giving us all a chance to enjoy our cattiness, because I have 0 in this category, but I'm going to open up the table for that. So any amusing anecdotes or drama or gossip that emerged from the Factory Gun Nationals this year? Okay, well, Brian, you clearly want to go first because you put your hands up like a good student. So what you got, big man?
So hilariously, the first day we were there, like we got there after getting to the airport, and everybody was kind of wandering around. For a while, we wandered together, and then we kind of broke off. I ended up at that was it stage 2, the sort of memory stage with all the long range targets. Mm-hmm. And I was sitting there kind of going back and forth. And the time when I first got there, Shane Coley and his crew were there kind of poking stuff, and I was trying to figure stuff out. And I'm still there walking around, poking the stages and stuff. And it was a little surreal because up to that point, I had been recognized by a few people, which to me is weird. I don't have that many subscribers. I don't have crazy amount of Instagram followers, but like, obviously my stuff is published for a niche audience and they're going to be at nationals. So it was kind of cool, but I had this guy like, "Hey, Red's Dot, Brian, right?" I'm like, "Sure." Like, I'm looking at this guy, like, I don't know who he is. Like, I don't want to be a jerk. I'm like, "Hey, man, what's going on?" And then he's talking, and he's like, "I was like, what's your name?" He goes, he's just like, look, he smirked at me when I asked him what his name was. And I was like, he's like, "It's all right, man, Jay. It's all right. It's easy to forget." And I was like, holy crap, it's Jay Beal. So like, I'm staring at Jay Beal, and I look over and I recognize. The funny thing is that most of his videos, I see the back of his head, or I see like the side of his face, or I see a bunch of pictures of his kid. I don't really see him very much. The funny thing was I see a lot more pictures of his brother, Nick. So when I turned around and looked at Nick, I'm like, I recognize Nick. So, so I ended up sort of embarrassing myself in front of Jay Beal, which was funny.
I have a Jay Beal story. I tried to introduce myself to Jay as we were both walking back towards the front of the match, and he totally blew me off. I was like, "Hey, you're Jay Beal, right?" And he's like, "Yep," and kept walking. That's the end of my Jay Beal story. Catch you next time, Jay. We'll bro out. It'll be fine.
I think
just let it happen.
I think I actually met Jay on that same stage too. I don't know if he was just hanging out there the entire pre-match or what, but yeah, I met him there too, which was totally awesome because I mean, in the videos that he does, he always has like this upward angle. So he must like set the camera on the ground to give him this like very tall, domineering, like shot. And then you see him in person, you're like, "Oh, you're normal size."
Yeah. He's his tripod game. He may have a mean USPSA game, but his tripod game is weak.
Well, it's the funny thing because like everybody likes to watch him for all of his videos shooting. I actually really enjoy all of his his home improvement stuff. That's actually why I subscribe to him more than anything. I really like watching him build his house.
Was he a DeWalt guy or a Milwaukee guy?
I don't know.
Jay, are you a DeWalt guy or a Milwaukee guy?
Makita.
And he's got
middle
goats.
finger in the air.
Goats is everything.
Oh, we'll find out soon enough.
Yeah.
Matt Hempel says Jay blew him off too. So he's the humblest goat farmer. I missed him. Apparently the humblest goat farmer you'll ever meet who blows people off at matches.
He is a Makita guy. Nice.
All right. That's solid.
That's awesome.
It's pretty strong. So I didn't hear of any drama or story. I mean, the closest thing, and I'll throw mine out there, the drama is that Max picked up the trophy to flex with in front of the banner before he was done shooting on the third day while he's still wearing his gun.
Yeah.
Because all of his pictures are taken while the sun is still up, and ain't nobody got those pictures taken during the daytime otherwise. But,
the other thing is that we were finishing our stage. We were in stage 4 at chrono at the very end of the match. So it was kind of funny. We got to the very end of the match before we chronoed. But we were kind of bouncing back and forth there. And I remember watching it it was a little before 4:30. I saw Max walking by with a few other shooters, I think that were on the super squad, and a bunch of ROs. And he had no gun on him, no gear, no nothing. His shirt was untucked, whatever. And so if you look at that picture, his shirt's still tucked in, his gun is still on, his gun belt is still on. And I'm like, man, we literally, there were multiple squads still shooting. The match was not over.
I mean,
confidence.
with he could have looked at the end of day 2 and probably figured out, like, if I have a good day, it's mine.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a good chance that he had enough of a lead after day 2.
But still, it's a professionalism thing. I mean, that's why I was rooting for Jason Bradley the entire time. Like, I was hoping B-Rad would come through. I mean, he did really well considering
He
his
did.
day 2. He was shooting in like monsoon weather, so
was
very
he
impressive.
was he shooting on the same relay as you?
Yeah, he was AM PM AM, and when I saw that he was 95 max, I was like, damn, that's good showing.
I mean, that was the worst match conditions to shoot.
You know, it was rough, but overall, I still think the match was very fair. Like, I have no complaints about it. Like, if you made mistakes, it was your own mistakes. It was not anything you could, put towards the stage or anything.
Yeah.
But it was solid. It was fun.
I mean, how long did you have your monsoon? Was that like a couple hours?
For me, I shot my first stage was actually dry. That was nice. But then after that, I think I got everything except the last one was rainy for me.
Man, we were all sitting in the house, like we bailed, we got home, started raining hard. Like, first thing I'm like, man, I'm glad to be at home. And then I'm like, oh crap, Tony's out there.
I mean, it was a good experience. I'm glad that actually happened to me. Because I never had a shoot when my gun was wet before. And I remember the first stage where I had to draw, or the second stage where I had to draw, and then I put my hand towards the gun, and immediately all I felt was just water. And I was like, oh, okay, this is gonna be interesting. And then I shot. And I realized when my gun recoiled, right, my left hand was still while the gun was moving. So it was like that. I was like, oh, okay. And I tried to compensate, and then I shot a no shoot, and I was like, well, there goes my day. And after that, I just didn't care anymore. But that was my experience.
So we showed up to shoot because we all shot with Yeeman and Batista, and going into the match, we were told that we couldn't have walkthrough music, and it was slightly controversial that you couldn't have walkthrough music. But that was the decision of the higher ups and whatever. And so Yi Min gets this crazy idea that he's going to do walkthrough music anyway, but he's going to do it in such a way that if the RO actually tells him no, the RO is going to come across as a commie. And so what we did was we showed up to the first stage. He puts "God Bless America" by the Mormon Tabernacle Choir and dares the RO to turn it off. And so we had a good time with that. In addition to the fact that Yeeman was wearing his Virginia battle flag on the back of it with the sign "Production will rise again." That was slightly.
Oh, his jersey was hilarious.
His jersey was legit.
Oh man.
So this may come as a surprise to the stream, but his name is Yeemin Lin, and he's Asian. And he had the Confederate battle flag on the back of his jersey, real big, with a Glock on it that said "Production will rise again." And that was,
man,
you could see him across the range. I mean, it was some serious, like, North Florida, Lower Alabama style jersey, and
Oh, I've got a lot of pictures of that, and we'll be making sure to post it when Yeeman runs for president.
What if he makes it in front sight wearing that jersey and that?
I'm certain they're going to put that one up there. But no,
yeah, that's probably not going to happen.
So we had I RO'd the stage 18 for the limited match, and I did my stage walkthrough. It was the same one every single time. But then it was the last day. Troy McManus comes up, and prior to that, he told us, read the stage line for line. Don't add anything in. I'm like, fine, whatever. And obviously, I wasn't going to listen to that. But Troy walks up. I look over. I see Troy right as I'm starting to read the stage brief to everybody. I'm like, oh shit, Troy's here. We have to be professional now. Apparently, he didn't like that much.
Oh.
So.
Here's some gossip.
That one.
What about on stage? I guess it was 6, where you shot the, freestyle, reload, then shoot strong hand only.
Oh my God!
That woman who held the timer like right here in everybody's face.
Well,
and she's like 4'11".
Well, my favorite thing too was like when I turned, right, like I like, okay, you're gonna have to turn and draw. I'm like, cool, and it's a surrender start, right? So I normally do surrender start. I'm like this because this hand comes straight down to the gun, the other one goes forward, like, so I'm like this, and she's like, you're not square to the back berm, your shoulders aren't aligned, and I'm like, that's better.
That fixed it.
Okay, sure.
That's okay. I made her smile because she said stand by, and I winked at her.
Man, just stop
Well,
seducing people, Robert.
she got in sideways with our whole squad was basically certified ROs,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a questionable hit, and I said, "Hey, did you overlay this after I taped the other one?" And he's like, "No, you've already touched the target. I can't overlay that one."
It's true.
And
It's a shooter.
I was like, I know that's not right in my head, but I mean, it wasn't really going to make that big a deal on the guy's run, so I let it go because it was one of the like B class dudes on our squad, and I was like, well, that's not right. Should have overlaid it, but whatever. And then I can't remember who it was, but later on we had the same issue come up, and she's like, no, you've touched the target. I can't overlay it. And then like 6 or 7 of us were like, that's actually not right. It came down on her and she overlaid it despite the target having been touched. So
Yeah, I will say for the most part, I didn't have any real issues with the ROs in general. So I know you worked for Race Gun, Robert, but for the factory side, I didn't have any issues.
No, we
I
didn't
was
either.
I was having a lot of ROs. They were pulling out overlays without anybody asking, which I appreciate. The one thing that is still killing me is that a lot of times, like you're looking for a hit on the edge, they take the one overlay and then just set it there. And it's like, look, you either need a straight edge along the perf. Like this is how they described how to do this. The other thing is that like when it's a double and they take one overlay, and I'm like, that's not how this works. You need 2 overlays. And there was a couple of times I watched that happen. Again, it's probably, it's the perfect double. It never is, but it's one of those, like, I think there was a few times where I witnessed that it was a little frustrating to me, but other than that, there were solid calls. I don't know who the RO was that called me on the foot fault, but I unfortunately, like the stage kind of blew by and I was having a kind of a rough day that day. That guy is a monster. Like he spotted like like if you watch my match video, it's like the last stage. Like I had a big leg like swinging over, like which totally should distract you, but it was the foot that was on the ground that just barely tipped over on the fault line and touched the ground. That's what he called. So he called it a foot fault. It was a legit foot fault. Like I'm like, bro, that guy was on point. Like extra points to that RO.
yeah.
So I'm not even.
I filmed all your video and I saw it happen with him, and I was like, I saw it as it happened because he like held up a hand. Like everyone does this for some reason. Like everybody used to shoot IDPA, so when there's a foot fault, like they do, like the cover call kind of thing, counting the procedurals. And as soon as it happened, he did it, and I replayed what I saw in my mind. I'm like, yeah, he's right. It was a foot fault.
Yeah, because
I mean, I didn't see it in the moment because it happened so fast. But when I thought about it, I was like, no, he was correct. It was a foot fault.
Yeah, and you see like my big leg swing over and the shots are going off. Like I finished shooting before the big leg hit the ground. Like, cause like, swing over and like, it was in the air when I was breaking the last shots, but it wasn't that one. It was the one that was already on the ground that tipped over and touched. So like I said, sometimes you have to like appreciate the ROs for making those tough calls. Like it's like, man, on the money. So aside from minor complaints about like use of overlays aside, it was a really good match. I did hear Troy's pep speech before he sent all the ROs out day before the match started about basically being professional and, hey, you guys are on video for everybody to see. Everybody will be watching this. So and you're kind of snickering, Robert, but I mean, to some extent, like from a shooter's perspective, I appreciate that. Like somebody giving a damn.
Yeah, no, I mean, the thing is, I understand what he's saying. You want your ROs to play it straight up. But they gave us a PowerPoint and they said, read this thing verbatim. And anybody who's ever tried to read a PowerPoint verbatim knows it sucks. It's garbage. I don't know why they did it, but they did. And even in that, there was housekeeping stuff that we had to add into it. And they kind of, how do I say this? They didn't want us to do that, but we still had to add the housekeeping in. And the funny thing is, I mean, Troy actually, he had mentioned it to somebody that I was ad-libbing a lot of stuff, but I am in the unique position to have had who's a Brian Connolly of Hunters HD Gold. He actually videoed me twice reading the stage brief, and if you watch both of those times, I say the exact same things to every single squad, like all the way down where to the you and I are going to Dairy Queen and you're going to buy me a tasty frozen blizzard. I said that to every single squad, and I was kind of proud of that. And so in this one instance, I understand what he's saying, and he's right. You want everybody to be professional and just to give everybody the same exact thing. But to the extent that your ROs are already doing that, then I say rock on. because I as an RO, I mean, I like having fun with shooters. I mean, that's actually one of the biggest reasons I even RO a match is because I actually like seeing the people come through. We have a fun time. It doesn't have to be, as an RO, you don't have to be this stodgy old person saying, your shoulders aren't square to the back of the berm. I'm like, come on, let's have some fun here. But
what was it? There was one stage during factory. It was the one where it was like the 4 pieces of steel. It was the double swingers. There was the partial and
yeah.
steel. Dude, the RO on that stage, he was like pointing stuff out as the other guy read.
That was hilarious.
Oh, what was it, peanut butter?
Hero. Huh?
I think it was peanut butter or TJ. I don't remember his name. No, they come to all the nationals. He's fantastic. He makes so much fun.
I was laughing, man. I told him that. I said, bro, like, if nothing else happens in this match, like, you made it worthwhile. Like, that was amazing to watch.
Yeah, he's my favorite RO.
Yeah, like, I circled him. If you watch my match video, when I get to that stage, like, I start shooting, and there's a little thing goes, best RO at match.
Yeah, that was exciting. Or that was fun, I should say. So, Hunter's HD Gold, by the way, since you guys are sitting in on the stream, next week, probably is going to be my Hunter's HD Gold video. Brian was cool enough because I talked to him at Nationals where he just basically sent me the same pair of glasses I shoot in to give away on my channel. So
you can just give those to me now. I mean, I'm okay with that.
So the caveat is going to be you have to comment on my video and you have to subscribe to Hunter's HD Gold. So when you see my Hunter's HD Gold video go up, you're going to have, I'm probably going to give it a 2-week time period that I'm going to use the random comment picker to pick a winner. So keep an eye on your YouTube notifications, because if I reply to you like, hey, send me an email at this address, that's a good indicator that you want a pair of Hunter's HD Golds that I get to send to you.
Just make sure when you put that video up, don't bag on the Taurus G3, because then all the fanboys will come and they'll totally blow my odds out.
Yeah. That's that video, man. That's
you're switching to that gun, right?
Yeah, it's great. It's going to be a really good paper. I don't know if you watched the updated video to it.
I did.
I haven't seen it yet. I'm saving it for tomorrow.
Well, so spoiler alert, the issue is the chamber is cut way too tight. So I took my CZ P01, and anybody who knows anything about guns know that CZs have about the tightest chambers in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I took 3 rounds of ammunition, 2 of my reloads, one with a Gallant 125, one with a 124 FMJ, which I use for reviews because it's a little less smoky, and a Wolf steel case round. And all 3 of them plunk and fall out under their own weight in the barrel of the CZ. So all 3 of these rounds are good to go. None of them would out of the Taurus.
Seriously?
The Wolf one, like if I shook it pretty violently, that's great. And we'll put that in a GIF or something. So if I shook the barrel pretty vigorously, it did eventually fall out. But neither one of my reloads would fall out. And I shake the crap out of that barrel. And it's just like, well, there's your problem. The chamber's too tight.
Interesting.
So, I mean, it could just be my barrel, but it's for somebody to cut a tighter chamber than a CZ, and like that's something.
Communicate that with Taurus, and
I didn't realize it until after they sent the gun back, and I was trying to troubleshoot it because the gun works now. It works.
Oh,
but I was like, hey, it's extracting. I thought it was a problem with the extractor, but it wasn't. It was the chamber is just way, way too tight.
So basically, it's the fire forming is not. It doesn't have time to retract after the fire forming, and so the extractor is just skipping over the.
Yeah,
case.
well, I think that the already there's enough force where I could shake the barrel and not get the case to fall out. So when it fire forms to the chamber, it's already a lot of friction going on, and now it's got pressure on all that friction.
Right.
And I think it's just overwhelming the extractor and the amount of force the extractor is putting on that case rim and causing it to stay stuck in the chamber, because they would stick about halfway in. It was worse on the steel case than it was on the brass, but the brass had the same failure rate. It was just easier to get the brass out of the chamber after it did it. The steel would stick to the point where sometimes I had to get out and like pry the case rim out, but the brass, I would still have to like reach in there and pull out with my fingers. It was still not, an easy malfunction to clear.
I mean, it's good on one hand that at least they solved it, because man, you sure pissed off like all of the 27 million Taurus owners.
Apparently, it's because I'm a paid shill from Glock. I'm a
Bro.
Glock
Oh, yeah.
fanboy.
50 flawless rounds for my
I want to make a T-shirt. If you guys want a T-shirt that says literally dozens of flawless rounds, I'm gonna be offering that on my Teespring store here in a few days.
I will buy one. I will
buy
have
one.
one of those.
I'm trying to on merch like that with cheeky comments. Would you rather have the cheeky comment on the front, so when you're talking to people at the range and matches, you can have conversation, or would you rather have it across the back so that
Front.
all of the Instagram will know you're famous?
Always the front.
Always the front. That's only funny when you get to talk to somebody about it. It's not funny when they see it in a video.
Yep.
Fair enough.
Because then they're just confused.
Well, gentlemen, that's all the topics I've got for the evening. Is there anything else anybody in chat or you guys want to throw out and talk about before we sign off?
Manny was super interested in our trip to Cracker Barrel, surprisingly.
Why?
Jay's interested in comments on the back, so I'll set it up both ways with the literally dozens of flawless rounds, both a front-facing and a back-facing one. Yeah,
No,
the
so
Cracker Barrel trip wasn't all that exciting. It was
I mean, Frank was happy and I was happy because I got fed, but
yeah, we were really we didn't get to eat till like 2 p.m. that day, and it was really nice to go to Cracker Barrel.
Yeah, I think we were all food crashing and that hit the spot.
Yeah.
What do you think about USPSA? I know you guys don't shoot production, but I mean, what do you think about USPSA putting production nationals essentially in Talladega on Mother's Day?
I don't really care one way or the other.
Yeah, I kind of figured it wouldn't be something that would be your jam.
I think it's lousy to put a nationals match on a even if it is a Hallmark holiday. Like, what if it was Valentine's Day? If nationals was on Valentine's Day, it's like, well, we use that same line of offense. We've all shot matches on holidays.
Yeah,
not those of us who aren't divorced.
Seems like
so. I think it's lousy they did it. I hope they walk it back and find another weekend that works for you guys that isn't past June, because Alabama be humid as well, and June, July.
Is Alabama rough in the springtime?
Yeah.
From a pollen standpoint, yes, because the pine pollen is like bright yellow, and you can see like huge clouds of it blowing on the wind, and there's pine trees all over the place. And that part, like the Talladega National Forest, is around Talladega, if you can believe it. And so, I don't know around Mother's Day if the pollen's going to be high. I think it's earlier in the year, probably mid-April is when it's at its kind of worst. But like everything's yellow in the South during the pollen season.
Yep.
Interesting. All I know is apparently there's you can buy guns at the CMP there, and so I'm gonna come home with some rifles. Because
if they're still legal.
Ooh, yeah. I don't really want to talk about it. It's still too real. Still too.
I will say, Robert, actually, part of me is considering it because I don't have any like real Mother's Day obligations myself. I am considering actually shooting that in production. Just grab one. I've got an iron sight Glock 17. I can just grab and go run at the match for giggles. So part of me is somewhat tempted to do that. It kind of is recon for shooting the CO Nats later in the year.
It'd be a fun match, I'm sure. I mean, I talked to Andrea, my wife, about it, and she was just like, well, what's the problem? Just go. Because to her, it's like it's today. But it kind of seems like one of those Admiral Akbar things of like, it's a trap.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I should go because it's generally going to be right about the time when I'm going to test for RM. But I don't know. I'd like to go there. I've never been. And in theory, if they haven't passed legislation outlawing all the guns, maybe I could pick up a few more rifles.
It might be the only nationals we get next year, because if they drop their gun bill in third quarter, fourth quarter, and all the high cap crap is illegal,
that would be weird.
It's just like, well, that was it, boys. We had a good run. Did have this question pop up in chat. I'm looking at a CZ Shadow Target 2. Should I execute Target 2 so can also run it in IDPA?
I think you should just get a Glock 26 and put a dot on it.
That's clearly the gun of champions.
Truth bomb.
Well, a serious answer is get the gun that you want to use. It's as simple as that. Like, if you want to use a gun, just use it.
Personally, for IDPA, and please don't crucify me, IDPA shooters, the shooting's not that hard to where even you would need a Target 2. It'll pay more dividends in USPSA where you're actually stretching out and touching targets, far in the distance and small steel and things like that.
Yeah.
Like that's the scoring model in IDPA. You aren't even shooting fast enough to really get the full benefit of the big heavy steel dust cover because everybody's terrified of dropping points. So like your splits, because that's what heavy guns do, right? Is they stabilize faster so you can shoot distant targets a little bit quicker than you could on lighter guns that take a little more effort to stabilize. So I wouldn't say you need to do it unless you are taking USPSA really seriously and you still want to shoot an IDPA match or two.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the only reason you'd really want to entertain that because you wouldn't want to get a Shadow 2 because you can't play with it in that game. But if you're going to bounce, that's what I did for a long time. I ran the SPO1 just because I could play both games because at the time IDPA was still actually big here, and so I'd go play both games and I had a great time doing it.
So if you've got the cash to splash, man, make it happen. But I don't know that I would inform. I would rather get the gun I wanted to shoot for USPSA and then shoot whatever else I had for IDPA, personally.
Well, you could do what I did and just show up with a Glock 41 and shoot CDP and take away the trophy from the one CDP guy there. He didn't appreciate that much, but
dirty.
Sucks to be him.
That's okay. I got yelled at by drunk people at the match I went to. So
The SPO1 is a nice gun.
Yeah.
I put more rounds through an SPO1 than I have a Shadow 2, but I like the Shadow 2 better.
I like the Shadow 2 better now. I didn't like it most of this year.
Yeah, you had about a year of problems with that thing, man. You're the definition of Stockholm syndrome.
Oh, very much so. It's like battered wife syndrome.
It's not so bad. I still enjoy these guns. I really do. I choked again, but I still really enjoy it.
Hey, I will have you know that gun ran like all of production and limited nationals. So I'm a happy person right now.
Two matches, not bad.
I know.
So Brian had that same issue you had where the brass was hitting his thumb as a lefty. And it happened to him once in a major match. And he basically said, fuck that shit and sold it.
No. That wasn't what was going on at that match. I was having a bunch of failure to feeds and a bunch of failure to extracts that I couldn't figure out. And it had nothing to do with it bouncing off my thumb, homie. I had been having problems with that, but right before I shot double tap, and it just got bad at double tap. And I was like, all right, I'm done with this.
I thought it was because it was hitting your thumb that you were getting stuck cases.
When I very first started shooting it, that's what was happening. But my thumbs were clear of the port. But as Tony likes to describe it, my guardian angel Gaston has shown me the light.
Yeah. So I think he says he has a Gaston Glock curse. And I think it's the opposite. I think Gaston is the only one that allows him, like, he can only shoot Glocks, right? So that means that he's cursed with all the other guns. And then Gaston is there protecting him. It's like, okay, you can still shoot if you use a Glock. And he's going to come into the light soon.
I don't know. I think if he shoots a Beretta, that one, you naturally are going to keep your fingers out of the way. Otherwise, you're going to be banging them off the
decocker.
The decocker, which is a very good incentive to get those fingers down. And it's a nice gun, but I have my Glocks and I quite like Glocks. Every time I pick them up, I'm like, yeah, this is a well-built gun.
They are nice guns. I don't love them, but they're nice guns.
That's because you don't shoot with the 26, man.
That's probably I've got too much grip length. I'm just thinking, what am I supposed to do with all this?
Yeah, if it's too easy to reload, it's not fun.
Yeah, I'm still impressed watching you actually reload that little G26.
It gets pretty easy once you get used to it.
Yeah, no, I mean you can learn anything
for sure.
What powders are you guys running? Somebody wants to know.
his own mag funnel in his hand.
Yeah, my hand acts as a mag funnel. It's cheating. Shh, don't tell anyone.
So Brian buys factory because he thinks reloading's for suckers. And
Yeah,
jokes on
not
you, you can't
anymore.
buy it now. But
Yeah, bro.
I'm using sport pistol, but it's rather smoky. Robert is using super secret sauce that he will not tell you about.
No, I will
And
not.
Tony is using
I use Tight Group, and it is smoky as hell.
I have not found a powder that I thought was particularly great on smoke. Like, it's the time of year, like how high the humidity is and the angle of the sun. Because during the summer, I don't even see the smoke on my gun.
Okay, I got a
But-
question for you. Did you guys notice at factory or in Florida? Did the guns seem smokier to you?
Oh, hell yeah.
In the
Yeah,
like in the
because-
morning.
It was
What was
because
up
of the
with that?
humidity and the density of the air. So
Oh,
smoke's going to vaporize in lower density air. It's going to scatter faster. And that high density, high humidity air, it doesn't want to go anywhere. So it just sticks. And you add that with that low sun coming over those berms, and boy, you just see white.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
but
was
there's
seriously wondering what was wrong with like if I had loaded badly or something like that, because I'd be shooting like in some positions and I'd be like, this is a lot worse than it ever is.
Yep.
Dude, stage 13, I think we shot the one where it was the barrel pickup and in the very small shooting area. And you had like the two targets. There was like an open target, then a target stack.
Mhm.
I just started lighting those things up. And after the first target was engaged, I couldn't see the targets anymore. They were gone. It's like, that's where they're supposed to be. So I Charlied myself to death on that stage because it's basically indexing into a cloud of smoke. And I was like,
Yeah, the trick to get past the smoke thing is if you shoot fast enough, you just leave the positions, right? So the smoke is never a factor.
Oh, I see what you did there.
No.
I see.
So
Yeah. Well
Just got to go
played.
hyperspeed. That's the plan.
That must
you
be
and
the issue.
You and Batista,
Yes, Batista's school of speed.
the house of speed.
Yeah.
He was trying to recruit me real hard into the House of Speed, bro. You have to teach me about what it takes to become a disciple.
The clean shot powder's okay. A lot of people like it. It depends on the bullet that you use. It burns hot and fast, and so sometimes people have trouble with it cooking off the coating a little bit. If you're running a heavier bullet like 135, 147, the clean shot works a little bit better, but it's harder to get some of the load data to work for it. It really depends on the one thing that you have to deal with clean shot is it's kind of temperature sensitive, and so just be aware of that. As far as other powders, sport pistol works really well. Tight group is a good one as long as you're running heavier bullets. Tony, what do you run? You like 125s or what?
I shoot 125s
Okay.
because for me it was like a good balance between price,
Yeah,
and that's pretty much it. Like to me, it doesn't matter.
right. Yeah, and the tight group works really well. If you can keep the speeds at the right place, tight group it works really, really well. It's a little bit smoky.
So Tony's strategy is to go over max loading. So he makes power factor in his little baby gun.
Oh, I've heard this story.
That's the plan. Yeah.
No, his loaded nationals chronoed out of the baby Glock. Their chrono was fast, so I would knock a few points of power factor off. But he chronoed at 139 power factor because he's loading 4.2 grains of tight group.
Yeah,
Actually, I
was like
chronoed at
4.2,
I chronoed at 139.
Oh, I got you guys beat. I chronoed 140 with Syntec.
Well done.
Ooh, beast. Yeah, because I think I chronoed at like 127 at either Area 4 or North Texas Open. I can't remember which one it was. And I was like, okay, this is a little bit too close for comfort. So then I just bumped up it by 3 grains or 0.3 grains. And then I was like, okay, it works.
Yeah, there was somebody who did really well in the match who may have came in at 127 and understanding that the chrono ran about 4 points hot, arguably probably didn't actually make it. But just throwing that out there.
It's one of the chrono that they ignored the crap out of sitting there because they had two. It was chronoing all my crap at like what I thought it was probably 30 or 40 foot per second fast.
Yeah.
The one that they were using.
But you know what though? That's the best way to be, right? I mean, you show up to a major match and the chrono's running a little bit hot, so that everybody's going to pass. I mean, unless you just did something terrible, at least everybody gets to enjoy the match without dying in chrono. because that would suck.
Yeah. I mean, but rules are rules, though. It's
Of course they are. But I mean, if you load your ammo up, and you live in a high elevation, and you come down and you don't understand that you're still new enough that you don't understand that you're going to drop power factor or something like that, and you show up at a low elevation match, and then you're like, well, crap, I just lost. And arguably, you shouldn't ever be in that position anyway. You should be loading hot enough that it's going to withstand those fluctuations. But it's a nice thing if you
No, for
get
sure,
through that.
Hey Tony, you got any aftermarket trigger advice for?
I only use stock, so I have no idea. I couldn't answer that question.
You're not going to at least make something up?
Get the what is it called? The Apex trigger or the Overwatch Precision? I don't know.
He seriously has no idea. This is amazing. It's great.
Put a minus connector in it. You're done. Easy.
I mean, you don't even need the minus connector.
Brian, you're honestly
really
the
don't.
trigger connoisseur. What would your advice be?
What do you want? I mean, that's going to be the thing. Like, so you can, if you're using it for gaming, there's a few different options. It also depends on what generation the gun is. Because the stuff that's good for the Gen 5s is not what's going to be good for Gen 3, Gen 4 guns, and vice versa. So I don't know. I honestly, as crazy as this is, I'm using a stock Gen 5 trigger from here going forward, and I had a Franken trigger, and I've used a ton of different triggers. So I don't know.
I don't know that there's a best. So the trigger shoe is going to be the basically the comfort factor. Like the trigger shoe is not really going to affect any. I guess it can affect your over travel and pre travel a little bit.
That's honestly like the one thing that I do like about the Gen 5s is all my Gen 4 guns, I put in one of those over travel stops for inside the trigger group inside the frame to stop the trigger over travel. That makes a huge difference when you've got to take A, fast shots, and B, when you have to take precise shots, because you're preventing yourself from jerking the gun too far. But the Gen 5 already basically has that same level of over travel stop in it. So for me, when I started messing with that, I was like, oh, well, there's one less thing I need to do. And when I started looking at how clean it runs, I was like, I'm just going to use the stock one.
So you can change the striker spring to a 4.5 pound if you want, but now you've just made your gun ammo sensitive after about 5,000 to 10,000 rounds.
No, it'll stop working after 5,000 to 10,000 rounds. So that's one of those things. It's ammo sensitive to start when you do that, but then what'll happen is after about 5,000 or 10,000 rounds, you'll start getting light strikes on everything, and you have to replace them. The Wolf springs are really, really nice. They're really, really precise, but they use what's called a low or a high ratio coil. So basically, it's a really thin wire around a large gap, which we start getting into compression springs. We can discuss the physics of that, but the fact is that they're very precise, but they wear out quickly. So you have to make sure you're replacing them regularly if you're going to go that way. And I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze as far as I'm concerned.
Because that'll take about a pound off your trigger pull, like total.
I have a question for you guys. Oh, sorry, I interrupted. Keep going.
I was going to say, and then the connector is going to change both the trigger pull weight, the reset, and the character of the wall when you pull it back. So I initially thought I liked rolling brakes and like light rolling brakes. I don't like that anymore. I like a nice, firm, hard wall. So I think a dot connector, or even not even a minus connector. I think a dot connector is probably my favorite Glock connector now because it has a good, firm wall, and I can just get over the fact that it's a 5-pound trigger or whatever.
I still prefer rolling brakes. I don't know. The weight of the trigger is less significant, I found, the more I've been shooting. I mean, obviously, I don't want like an 8-pound trigger. I don't want one of the stupid New York triggers or anything like that. But honestly, like when it comes to rolling through shots fast, that rolling trigger for me is way easier than a wall. And as far as shooting precisely, I don't really have an issue because I have a pretty good follow through and I have a really good grip. So that covers any small sins that may show up in the trigger.
Yeah, everybody's different. So you're going to want a wall or you're going to not want a wall. And there's arguments to be made for both. I've shot both. Just right now I prefer walls, so I don't use the 3-pound. If you like rolling walls, then put on a 3-pound connector. The Black Ice connector from Glock Store is
But-
actually a really good connector. But
How long did it take you guys to realize, like, in your mind, what's a good trigger and what's a bad trigger?
when I learned how to hit the target in the center,
Okay.
I started to become aware of more in tune with what the trigger was, how it was affecting it. Because when you can't hit the target in the center because your grip sucks and you're not locking your wrists, you think the trigger is the problem, but that's usually not the problem. And I don't even think the trigger enters the equation until you learn how to shoot accurately.
Okay.
And
Because I personally don't think I would ever even think about the trigger unless if, like, the only reason why I ever even think of the trigger is when someone else brings up the trigger. Like, if no one ever brought it up, if I was like shooting my own vacuum, I wouldn't even think there was a such thing as a good trigger or a bad trigger.
I
that makes any
actually met this guy at Area 4. He stayed at the Airbnb. His name was Tony, who had a Glock 26. It was the shittiest trigger I ever had in my life. And talking to him is when I realized that I spend way too much time getting wrapped around the axle of what a good trigger is and isn't. And really, when I'm with you, Tony, when I pick the gun up and I shoot it, I'm like, yep, I'm just shooting the gun.
Yeah.
And I
an
only think
expression I
about it
like
when
to
somebody
use
says,
is that you won't notice that from the back of a galloping horse, because when you're actually on the course of fire, you don't feel all that crap.
Yeah,
You can't
like
tell the difference.
you're just going like this. You're pulling
No,
it back. You're not,
you're letting your
100%.
eyes tell you when you should be shooting, and you're
Yeah.
not getting a whole lot of feedback from the trigger.
yeah,
So-
I had to talk to you, Tony, about that. And that's when it was one of those light bulb moments that I'm like, yeah, actually, he's got a really good point there. And so you walk away from it and you're like, okay, yeah, maybe we're spending way too much time worrying about things that don't actually return value.
because you always see, like, let's say gear reviews, right? They always, let's say Garand Thumb. He gets a gun, puts it in his hands, like, okay, everyone, we're all gonna do this together, and then they're just like dry firing this trigger. But then when you're actually shooting, you don't consciously think about how your finger is moving, right? Like when I'm shooting, as long as the trigger pull is less than, let's say, 6 pounds, something like that, then I don't notice my finger moving when I'm shooting. I'm just putting holes through paper and then moving to the next spot. And it could be, I could be using a Glock, I could be using a CZ. It doesn't really matter, right?
That's
So-
the other. Yeah, keep going.
No. So I'm just thinking that all this trigger talk is distracting people from getting better, because it helps you maybe in your dry fire focus, but in an actual shooting situation, it's like it's such a minor difference that you have bigger things to work on in your game than whether or not your trigger is optimal.
I think part of it, there's two things. One is that when you get past the beginner level, when you're still trying to figure things out, when you do add in a nicer trigger, something's got a better pull, it does help you because it covers the sin of your bad grip or covers the sin of your bad control. And so you start to see improvement from it. So you kind of buy into the idea that it is better. And I think you most of us, and I seem to find this as sort of a recurring theme, the further down the road you go, the less it matters. And in fact, it even matters less and less what gun you're shooting, because I can pick up most any firearm and be better than proficient with it at this point, which is interesting to me. I'll also roll this argument back to we were talking about reloading and what loads. I've had guys argue about power factor and bullet weight and all this other stuff back and forth. And honest to God, like you're talking about from the back of a galloping horse, it's the same thing. I have like, well, this is a 128 power factor and yours is like 134. And yeah, if I put them in a magazine together and shoot them and go boom, 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 I can tell the difference. Boy, there's a big difference. But when the buzzer goes off and I'm just trying to hammer targets, I won't notice.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think the most important thing about your load is that it's accurate in your barrel.
Yeah.
That's the number one thing you want.
It's that, and for me, it has to do with how it feels when it cycles. So I try to pick something that feels comfortable when it cycles for when I'm running like faster splits or that sort of thing. But that has less to do with the power factor, more with how I'm springing it versus the slide weight versus the bullet weight and the energy being dispersed, et cetera, et cetera. So it's one of those, just like you try to find that thing where it feels right. You're like, oh, that feels good. Okay, I'm going to stick with that. And just that's what you do.
And there's one more thing I want to bring up about pulling the trigger. What worked for me was that I learned how to pull the trigger poorly, and I got used to doing that. So then my worst case floor was still accurate enough. So you have a lot of people who try to learn how to pull the trigger perfectly back, right? And they're doing this, they're thinking about doing it every single time. But actually, when they get into a shooting situation, they don't fall back to that habit because they're not like pulling it under stress. So what I did was I learned how to slap the trigger, like just pull the trigger badly. And then I learned to stabilize my dot while pulling it really bad. And as I did that more and more and more, I realized I'm probably pulling something similar to this during a stressful situation, like let's say during a match where I'm going as fast as possible. So if I can keep the dot stable while shooting poorly, then theoretically, like I don't have to worry about my trigger pull at all. If that makes any sense.
No,
Yep.
totally, 100%.
So I never worried about trying to like perfect my trigger pull because I don't think that's a practical situation. Maybe it is for bullseye, but for practical USPSA shooting, you want to go as fast as possible. So
the shooting we do isn't that hard.
It's
I
not.
mean,
it's not.
A 20-yard mini popper. I mean, yeah, okay, that's a little tough.
I mean, but you can still slap the trigger. Like
You
if you stabilize your gun fine and you slap it back,
starts at the center of the target, then you can still make it happen. But the problem is if you pull the trigger when the dot's on the edge of the target, and then you pull it off the edge, then you're going to have a bad day. But
that means that your index was wrong, though.
Yeah, exactly. That's a different issue. Like that's the whole point. Is
I still slap the trigger. Even with the CZs, I've always slapped the trigger. I mean, some people are very pin and press and all that sort of stuff. No, I slap it every single time. I can't stop doing it at this point.
Yeah. For me, that was one of the things, like one of the very first things I did when I got into this sport, because I grew up shooting precision stuff. So like slow pulls and let the brakes surprise you and all that goofiness. But when I got into this stuff, it was very clear that wasn't the answer. And I want to say, I think it was like a video with like Rob Latham or something like that, saying that basically was like, oh, it's like, you're going to have to pull this trigger quickly, and saying that you're not going to slap the trigger, you're going to perfectly pull it is stupid. It's not going to happen. So you have to learn how to grip the gun properly, that you can just run the trigger and get the accuracy you need.
Right.
The reality is that I don't care if it's an IPSC target or a USPSA target, an A box is pretty damn big. It's not, I'm no longer trying to lay rounds on top of each other at, 25 yards. So the level of precision I need is less.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with any of that. The other thing, and people always want to talk about grip angle, I found that it doesn't matter. Like, okay, for your draw and your index, it makes a difference. But if you're gripping the gun correctly, the sights align anyway. And it's just a matter of seeing how you set kind of your wrist. And then if you're gripping it correctly, the sights are there.
There's some to that. Like, you can train any gun, right? But I think there is something to the fact that we're all physically different, right? Our hands are different sizes and shapes, and our wrists move differently, and our arms present differently. And I think there is stuff. And the nice thing is there's a variety of guns, right? So different grip shapes, sizes, bore heights, whatever. But there's a nice variety there to find a thing that works well for you versus having to necessarily train around something that sucks. So,
but I'll counter that and say that, like, because this was me, is I got the CZ and I basically stunted my development as a shooter because I was using the heavy dust cover as I didn't learn how to lock out my right wrist until I started shooting Glocks, because you have to with the Glock and you don't have to with a CZ.
That part, as far as the training, sure. But what I'm saying is, like, as far as like, somebody complains, like, I don't like how this gun points. It's not comfortable for me. The grip doesn't feel good. Like,
how the gun points and the grip not feeling good, in my mind, are two separate issues.
Sure, but that's what I mean. Like, you have choice, so it's not like you have to I have to go Glock because this will make me good at this thing. It's like, there's no reason. I honestly, like, one of the guns I absolutely terrible at shooting are M&Ps, and I don't know why. But if I have to, sure, I can run one, but I hate running them. But there's plenty of people that like them or that fits their hand well or whatever. So it's always a matter of choice.
It's a funny thing about M&P. I don't know if you noticed this, but M&P has all but left the market. You don't see it in USPSA a whole lot anymore. And I don't know what's up with that.
I don't know. One guy in our squad was running them, and he was having trouble the entire match.
Yeah, it's such a weird thing, because I've got one and the gun runs exceptionally well, but you're just not seeing them anymore. And I think it's
their price bracket is in between Glock and a Canic. So I think the issue is that if you're going to go really cheap, you're just going to get a Canic, and if you're going to spend a little bit more on a striker, you're going to get a Glock, right? So it's in a no man's land where, like, no one wants to get that.
Oh, that's an interesting thought. I never thought about the price point on it, but that's actually a really good point.
But that's kind of crazy to me because what are we talking about here? I mean, SFX is $500 and MMP is $500.
Yeah, but the
But
value you get
so
from
much
the
more bang for the buck
SFX,
from the Canic.
and or you can spend 600 on Glock. So it's like, if why would you get an MP?
Yeah, exactly.
On a gun that if you're pursuing this game that you will put more money through the barrel in a year than you will on the purchase price of the gun.
People don't think like that. Even in our
Yeah,
sport,
it's
I hear some crazy knowledge. You're not wrong, but people don't ever think about that when they're buying the guns. I hear people complain about the price of dots, and they're like, "Oh man, well, that dot's really expensive." And it's like, except for you just told me you shot 1,000 rounds last month, so you shot a dot and a half worth of ammo.
Yeah, but that's that. I mean, that's what you and I were talking about earlier. Perception's everything.
yeah.
I mean, it's just that's how that works. It's the same reason if they try and put a staccato in CO, there's this perception.
Yes, let's do that. Let's do that topic, Robert.
We can do that topic if you want.
Let's go.
I don't.
We got all night.
Yeah, right.
So we'll present two sides of the. Okay. So I'll present my case for putting single action only guns in carry optics, and then Robert will present his case, and you guys can pick it apart or whatever. So let's see. I'll get my phone up here and make sure I'll give myself a minute so I don't bore you guys. 1 minute. Boom. Here we go. So carry optics is open minor, with the caveat that the gear is supposed to be carried. I don't think carry optics has an established identity as a division. It's been largely provisional since it's gone because there have been major substantive changes year on year since it was introduced. And right now, as it is, I mean, we all know that the guns don't matter. So Staccato has actually created a gun that people are carrying and are using for law enforcement and border patrol and all that kind of stuff. So I actually really like the idea of, I mean, I'd even allow magwells in carry optics if they came up with like a caliper, like a fixed caliper, and your magwell has to be, narrower in this dimension and shorter than this dimension or whatever, something like that. I'd be okay with it because I think it'd be awesome to have kind of like a come one, come all, let's lay it down shooting minor, because you can't outrun bad hits with a minor gun. It's just impossible, and the gun doesn't make that big a difference. So my time has expired. Robert, when you're ready, I'll give you a minute.
Go for it.
Okay, and go.
All right. Basically, what you're doing is you're creating open minor. You just don't have a comp on it. And so if we're going to actually talk about carry optics with a single fired or a striker, a single action gun, then, I mean, that's what you're doing is you're creating open minor. But fundamentally, it's still about perception. People look at carry optics as a gun that they can still go buy off the shelf and actually shoot, and they're going to put a dot on it. But if you go and allow these $3,000 staccatos in, suddenly people are like, well, that's the gun I have to get, even though we know that Nils is going to show up with his Canic and still beat everybody. The gun doesn't matter. We know that. The gun flat out doesn't matter. But the perception is everything. And I think perception is ultimately the problem. And so adding these staccatos and these $3,000 guns into it, people start to look at it from the standpoint of, well, that's the gun I have to get, when the reality is completely opposite of it.
That you timed that perfectly at a minute. That's very well done, sir. You had about 2 seconds left.
Robert, do you feel that carry optics right now is open minor, or do you think it's not?
I think that the times are getting pretty damn competitive with open minor.
Do you feel as though, do you think it's closer to open minor right now, or do you think it's closer to production with 140 mags and a dot?
Ooh, that's a great question. I don't know how to answer that. I mean, is that a
No, that's fair, because
question?
I'm thinking about it this way. Like,
that.
if you feel as though it's closer to open minor than it is to, let's say, the production with a longer mag and a dot on it, then there shouldn't be really any issue just making it open minor, right? Because it's already so close to it. But if you feel as though
I know how to answer that. Okay,
go ahead.
Oh, so to me, I still think of carry optics, it'd be closer to production, because production at its core was still kind of that stock service weapon division. So it was going to the sportsman's warehouse and buying a pistol up off the shelf, and in this case, slapping a dot on it, and you're going to add bullets to it. Personally, I think it should only be 15 rounds in carry optics, but that's an entirely different discussion. But I do actually think that carry optics should be a carry optic division, meaning you could, to Dave's point, I think you could make a stronger argument that a weapon mounted light would belong in that division more than a magwell would.
Fair enough.
I'd be okay with weapon mounted lights and carry optics.
I think
don't
it'll
see a
throw the
problem with
balance
it.
off. I actually agree with you on that. The balance does get a little bit wibbly, but it actually does it does support what the division claims to be, which is a carry optic, something you would actually carry to go, as a concealed carry, daily carry, whatever you want to call it, division.
Well, clearly, right now that the name carry optics is just a formality, right? More than
They might as well call it like
100%,
orangutan
100%.
division. It doesn't matter. It's
so it
just,
doesn't matter. So the question is, what do we want as shooters? We want the identity of carry optics to be, and I think right now it's pretty solid.
I think we're getting there, but I mean, what is the next big rule change going to be? And I think we're continuing to figure it out. I think we're close to knowing what the identity of the division is, but I kind of like it as kind of a proving ground for all the stuff, because I mean, there's a ton of guns that are running head to head in the division, and
sure, yeah. I mean, personally, I don't care where it ends up. I mean, I'm going to shoot whatever. So like, whatever.
My biggest fear with all these changes, and I know we're just rehashing this, Dave, but my biggest fear with all this, it's the California creep, where somebody comes in and the good idea fairy says, well, let's just add this thing to production. Well, now we're going to add a fin, or the nitro fin, or whatever they call it, to the thing. And now let's increase the weight of it. And pretty soon you've taken all of these divisions, whether it's open, limited, or production or whatever, and you have essentially just combine them into one giant melting pot of division, and the divisions have lost their unique identities, where like single stack is very much a certain thing. Carry optics should be its very own thing. I mean, like when you go up, if a brand new person came to a match and they plunk their gun down on the safe area table and says, what division do I shoot? There should be a clear able to say, this is the division that most closely fits. We always say limited if they're running a standard gun, but there should be a clear division where that belongs. And I worry that sometimes when we start to like make all these divisions so close to each other that we're just throwing everything in a giant bowl and just saying we don't know.
I mean, I think they're pretty like standardized right now. Like if you get a gun, you can look at it and be like, okay, it can be here, here, or here. I mean, it's
no,
like you can cover pretty much anything right now.
No, I generally I like the divisions where they're at right now. I think they're doing a pretty good job. I still like the idea of carry optics being 15, but I like it because of the name carry optics.
Sure.
But your point is valid. I mean, it's just a name at this point. It could be anything. But if I go strictly off that name, that carry optics name, but beyond that, I like the divisions we have. We have some really good and fun, unique divisions in this game.
So Tom made a point on your podcast this week about how like it should be closer to production optics and all this kind of stuff. And I don't agree at all with that, because the division was production optics when it was introduced. And like of everyone in the world, this guy was the only one who shot it. You and Max Michel were the only two people who shot it that year.
Yeah, Brett shot it here locally before it was cool.
And once they changed it to 140 millimeter mags, it witnessed huge growth. And then when it was based, you can do whatever you want to your gun and use 140 millimeter mags and a slide-ride red dot. Then all of a sudden it was like, I'm right on. I can take this whatever I've got and I can go shoot it in carry optics. And so I don't know. From a mechanic standpoint, I think like the thing that matters about carry optics is it has a 140 millimeter mag, it has a red dot, and it has minor scoring.
Yeah.
And everything else in the division is just noise. It doesn't matter. It's not the character of the division. Like those three things are really the only thing that matter in carry optics gun.
And so the people who argue against a magwell, for example, right? You're only doing one reload anyway.
Yeah, there's one reload per stage. Who cares?
Who gives a crap? Who gives a crap, right? That doesn't matter to me. And a compensator, like you're shooting minor, who gives a crap? Like, I honestly do not care about any of these rules.
But like, you are good.
Well,
That's
but the thing is,
but you are good. That's the problem,
sure.
though, is the perception. The brand new person that comes into it, what they see is they're like, well, my gun fits in this division, but I can see the guys who are winning, and they have a magwell and a comp and a blah 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 blah. And in their brain, they immediately think, "Oh crap! I'm now going to have to drop an extra $500 or $600 to get what they have." Even though you'll sit there and tell them, "Well, no, none of this matters," but you have it. I'm not saying you specifically, you in the general.
No, I get
but
you. I get you.
That's the reality that a lot of people look at, and you see that with production. People look at these really expensive CZ Shadow 2s. They're like, "Well, I have to get that gun." You're like, "No, you don't." Niels wins it with an El Cheapo Canic. Well, yeah, but this is what everybody else is running. The gun doesn't matter. Fundamentally, the gun doesn't matter. If you get, it just doesn't. But people's perception, being what it is, that's what drives them. And you kind of want to avoid that if you can.
Do you feel like the average person that gets into USPSA, they already have some sort of, like, let's say, compensator on their gun, or like maybe some sort of carry magwell?
So in the new shooter match that I run, most of the time what you see people coming with is a standard off-the-shelf gun.
Okay.
It's a Sportsman's Warehouse, whether it's a Canic, an XD, doesn't matter. It's an off-the-shelf gun. And we always put them in limited because they can fill their mags up super easy.
Sure.
Occasionally you'll find, not occasionally, on a semi-regular basis, and I think some of that's because this is Utah and we get that a lot, but you'll see people come in and they will be running a dot gun, and sometimes it'll be that Roland special kind of setup with a little mini comp, and stuff like that. And we're like, cool, you're an open. And the funny thing is, they'll come and then they'll come back again to play the regular match, and inevitably we'll always have this conversation, which says, they say, well, I'm in open right now, but I have to go and buy this really expensive gun to be competitive. And I was asking them the question, what do you want out of this thing? I mean, why are you even playing this game in the first place? And they always say, well, I want to get good with my carry gun. Then shoot the carry gun. That's the only thing that matters. If you're trying to get good with that gun, then shoot that gun. Run the gun until the gun doesn't do what you need it to anymore.
My argument for making carry optics as close to open minor as possible is that you can get those people just shooting carry optics right away, so they don't actually have to buy anything. You see what I mean? Because if they come in with a dot and a compensator, they can just shoot CO from the get-go.
The problem is you then have other people that are sitting there saying, well, why do I then have to have this on there to be competitive? And you say, well, you don't.
With a comp, I don't think it necessarily is, because
of course it's not.
Well, hear me out before, like, regardless of what advantage a minor comp offers, it also makes the gun hideously unreliable if you don't tune your ammo to it. And most people shoot whatever they can get their hands on and don't tune their ammo to a comp. So it isn't that much of a performance advantage. Like, okay, you've got one or you don't, whatever. And it makes the gun easier to have malfunctions with, because, like, to make the comps run well with minor loads, you need a lighter spring. A lot of these striker guns with a super light recoil spring don't do so hot. Like, you want to punch open a port with your gun and watch it hang out a battery? Like, awesome. Then do it.
Yeah, a lot of the comps were there. I think you were saying because they were trying to run like the plus P ammunition, and so you'd get that benefit of them.
Yeah. I mean, running hotter ammo makes the comp work harder, makes the gun shoot softer. Like, even my stupid little carry comp, like, it does better with defensive loads than my range loads.
Right.
So what happens if we have open minor, right? Like, as close to open as possible, and then people just end up using their open guns and shoot open minor even though they're shooting major? What happens if you have that situation?
I think the full bore open guns, I think, are still going to, because of just how spicy it is, like, an open gun shoots softer than a minor gun. Even a carry comp to minor
exactly.
gun.
So I think that will be the issue, is that if you allow compensators, you'll have major shooters purposely shooting still their major ammo, but they're being scored as minor, but they have that.
Yeah, I guess that is
actually work.
So maybe no compensators, simply for that mechanic, because it could get abused.
Yeah, I think that would be the loophole there.
Right.
Because, I mean, if Christian Seiler decided, I mean, if you changes the open minor scoring, right, he'll still, like, destroy everyone.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting.
That's an interesting thought experiment. Red, you've been pretty quiet on all this.
I don't know. I've heard a lot of debates back and forth, and I shot CO back when it was still just basically was production with a dot, and it was fun. But even for me, it was sort of like, this is a fun lark, and I'm not going to keep doing this. I'm just going to go back to production where all the heat is. Then they did the whole 140 mil mag rule, and I'm like, okay, I hate reloading, and I was already thinking about getting a limited gun, so this is awesome. And here I am years later. I guess there's some arguments that I see as far as the rules that are like, I kind of like where CO is now. Like I'm building that one Walther to be the 59 ounce limit, Project Fat Boy. Check me out on Instagram. But it's one of those things, like it's just for giggles. Like it's not because, oh man, 59 ounces is going to make the gun perfect. I'm like, nah. It's a matter of just saying that I can. And I think one of the advantages with pushing that to that level is that means that, okay, now we don't have to worry about the whole, like, because I had one of the Shadow 2s that got milled for optics when it was still a 43 ounce limit. So, you're going with like, shallow grips and all this other stuff to try to make weight, and it kind of detracts from shooting it. So you push the weight limit up, you don't get goofy about the triggers, because the reality is, and we just discussed this, the triggers don't matter. I don't think that the guy with the whatever I call it, the SIG fin for the right-handed shooters is going to suddenly shoot flatter than I am.
Hey, how many gas pedals were in the top 10 at Carry Optics Nationals this past year?
Let's see, 0 plus 0, carry the one.
Zero.
There were 0 of them.
So, and the other thing to point out is that while yes, Max was shooting one of the SIG Legions, obviously, what was it was named Jason Bradley, was running a Canic. And he came in 5% of max. So like, hi, welcome to the land of it really doesn't matter. You don't need to have the big heavy gun to shoot fast.
That's been what's made this year really good, is to see like the Nils and all these guys showing up with just normal guns and doing well. I mean, doing really well. It's just shown. I mean, even you, Tony, I mean, just showing that the gun doesn't matter. It's like the one takeaway from this entire year is the gun, by and large, it doesn't matter. There's so many other things to pay attention to and learn. Don't get wrapped around the gun.
Yep. And see, for me, that's one of the reasons I'm jumping over to that stock Gen 5 17. It does a few of the nice things that I want it to do. I'm comfortable with the platform, but by leaving it stock, I've got a stockpile of ammo that's a little bit finicky with my Gen 4s because of the way the strikers work, but I know it'll set it all off with the Gen 5. So cool. I have a nice supply of ammo. So now I don't have to worry about it. And I can just go to town every time I want to yank the gun out and not have to worry about it. So to me, there's more advantage in just being able to shoot what I want than there is in I got the extra barrel length. I got the extra weight. I mean, I've got that. I've got the 39 ounce Glock 34. Like, that's crazy. Like, the thing started out life at 26 ounces. I mean, but, and yeah, I can see some of the difference, but also I ended up shooting. So this is fun. So I've got the 39 ounce Glock 34. I ended up shooting all the nationals with what I call my IDPA gun, because it's an IDPA legal Glock 34. So there's no extra weight on it. There's nothing funky. The spring is a little bit lighter for the loads that I'm shooting, and that's it. So I shot the entire match with that thing because I felt in my brain I was more accurate with it. And that was all just in my head. It's not.
Yeah, it all comes down to mindset.
So, and it was an interesting discussion because I brought both with me. And I actually remember in the house, Tony's like, if you think you're going to shoot more accurately, just shoot that one. I'm like, all right, fine. Then I won't think about it. I'm just going to shoot. And that's really all it was about. It had nothing to do with the gun being heavier or lighter or whatever. I mean, so I guess the discussion talking about the identity of Carry Optics, I'm okay with where it's at. Yeah. I don't like the idea of going to 15 rounds. I like the idea of making production 15 rounds, only because that seems to make more sense to me. Carry Optics, people are investing more dollars into the guns as is. And I think it does make an interesting split when you start talking about, basically, it's almost like I can take open level risky shots with the dot, but I have to shoot a limited stage plan and I have to reload like I'm in production the few times I do have to reload. It's kind of, it makes it an interesting thing.
Yeah. I think production to 15 makes more sense than Carry Optics to 15. I think it'll be a mistake making Carry Optics 15 because I think a lot of people say it'll kind of like have parity with IPSC. But then, generally speaking, IPSC stages are much shorter. than
Yes.
USPSA shorter stages. So it's like, yeah, you're having 15 rounds, but you're also shooting longer stages. So if you want to keep the same reload cadence, then I mean, just keep it where it is.
Yeah,
And-
and my whole
yeah.
reason for 15 rounds for carry optics actually has nothing to do with
Fair enough.
the
Yeah.
reloading or anything. Like it's actually just because that's what a standard magazine that you're going to
Sure.
buy from a gun. That's actually the only reason. But
Yeah.
to your point, Tony, though, I mean, if we're just calling carry optics because that's what we're calling it, then that whole 15 argument goes out the window. And then yeah, let them have the 140 millimeter mags. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So,
Minor optics, we should call it something like that.
Yeah.
That's
Just optics.
basically
It's
what
called
it
optics.
is. It's
Yeah.
optics minor.
Yeah.
It sure has become that.
I prefer calling it baller optics. Just saying.
Baller optics.
Baller optics.
Sig optics.
Baller on a budget optics.
Ooh, what happens if USPSA changes the name of the division based on what gun wins that year? So it would be called Sig Optics for this year, and then whoever wins,
Or
would be,
Tanfolio division.
that would be pretty cool though. I mean, think about that. It's like
So this is like a sports ball team having naming rights on their
So
stadiums.
you'd have Infinity division.
yeah, hey, you get
You'd have Sig Irons division, Sig Optics division.
well, just think about it this way: like more people or companies might put more money into the competitive
I actually
sports
think you
by
got-
doing that.
That's actually true. They probably would put a lot of money in there just to get Nils to be the winner of that division.
Think about it.
Oh yeah.
Like, what's the negative here?
I don't
Like, because
see
we
why-
don't really care what the name is, right? But like, we know what it is.
right.
So
And
you call it like
fundamentally, they're-
Sig Carry Optics, or
Yeah, the shooters are all going to call it carry optics regardless.
exactly,
But
exactly.
the company, they're going to get behind that.
Yeah,
The 2000
That might be enough impetus for them to inject cash to where more people actually got factory sponsorships that were meaningful.
Yeah.
like, I don't see it as a bad thing for the sport. I think it will help grow the sport. I don't think it's going to cost much because it's just a name, right? Like, it won't cost the organization anything, but companies might be interested in, like maybe
They'd have to do some graphic image stuff for front site and their website. One that's like introducing the divisions for 2021 year, Sig Carry Optics.
Yeah, I just want to know who we have to kill or retire to get rid of USPSA putting out that stupid magazine. Because apparently they're not going to get rid of that. I tried that in the annual meeting.
Man, you have to sign up for a new account in order to not pay the $40 yearly membership thing. So if you were to renew your membership, you automatically get thrown into the magazine.
Yeah, I asked them about that at the annual meeting, and they're like, "No, it's there." And so I went back and I looked, and I'm like, "Bull crap! It's there. It's not there."
You have to sign up as a new member, because I tried to make a new member for my left-handed shooting.
Yeah.
So I made a new member, and I was like, "Oh, if you opt out of the magazine, you only have to pay $25." But then that option wasn't there when I went to renew my yearly membership. But then I found out that you can't actually have two memberships. So then I was like, "Oh crap!" So I had to add it onto my original membership.
Interesting.
But
well, when my renewal time.
I'm glad you figured that out before they banned you from the sport, Tony.
oh,
for
I asked them.
manipulating
Yeah,
orders.
I asked them. I was like, "Can I do this?" And like, "No, you can't." I'm like, "Okay, cool."
You keep the $25.
No, they asked me if I wanted to roll it into my original. I was like, "Yeah, sure, cool." I got a year for cheaper. So
Nice. Well, gentlemen, it's been fun, but I'm starting to suppress yawns over here. So I think we hang it up for the night.
Sounds like a plan.
sounds good. It was fun.
All right, guys. So going around the horn, Robert can be found on.
Just totally blitz out.
I think he just screw you guys. I'm done.
Well, good night.
All right. Well, good night, everyone. You can follow me at Reds Dot
Boom.
and
Right there.
the Humble Marksman.
Instagram.
Yeah.
Oh,
come watch-
damn. Frank was here.
come
We
watch
should have
the-
invited him
Frank.
on.
sometime.
Bye, everyone.
See y'all.
Later.